Let's welcome in our morning guest, Mr. T.S. Harihar now joins us. S.P. Prasad will just be with us, and Ruchit Jain is with us as well. Mr. Harihar, let's start with you. What are your top picks for the day?
After the sharp correction we have seen in pharma and in IT, we have gone a bit defensive, and we feel that there is a lot of value in three stocks. So our first stock for the day is Infosys, where we are recommending a buy at about 970 with a target of about 1050 on Infosys. Our second call is on Sun Pharma, where we are recommending a buy at about 652 with a target of 710. And lastly, we have a buy call on ITC, where we are recommending a buy at about the current market price of about 249, 250 with a target of about 275. And all these are 1 month targets. We feel that there could be a very sharp pullback in all the three stocks in the next 1 month.
All right. So there are some buys coming from the defensive space. Ruchit, your top picks today?
Yeah, hi, good morning. From a very short-term trading perspective, we have recommended to go short in BHEL first. So probably around 136, one can look to go short in BHEL. The stock in a recent up move has just managed to retrace 38.2% of its previous corrective move. This is clearly a negative indication. Even the momentum readings are indicating further weakness in the stock. So one can go short around 136, keeping a stop loss above 140, expecting a target of 128 in about 1 week's time frame. And my second pick is from a mid-cap space, which is MCX. Probably in this recent correction in the mid-cap in last few days, this stock has managed to outperform the overall markets. Even on the weekly charts, the stock has been forming a flag pattern, which is a bullish continuation pattern. So we are expecting up move in the stock. One can go long around current levels with stop loss placed below 1260 for target of 1450.
Right. One space that will be in focus today would be the pharma pack. And let's start with Lupin and then what happened in the pharma sector. So firstly, Lupin has received a EIR for its Goa plant. They had got two particular 483s. One was received earlier and the next one has been received today. What does a EIR mean? A EIR stands for Establishment Inspection Report. It means an official closure of the Form 483 or the inspection that started back in March 16. So basically, they have no outstanding issues as far as these facilities is concerned, and that comes in as a very, very big positive because it will mean that approvals would start to come in. Why this plant is important is because to the US business, which is a high margin business for all Indian pharma companies, Goa plant contributes 50%. They have 30 ANDAs pending, and I was looking at some of the names. So, 12 names of these ANDA are particularly quite good and relatively better than what most of the drugs suggest. Also, since March 16, they have not got any approval. That is the time since, when we have seen this Form 483 being issued. So since then, they have not got any approval. Street, however, was expecting it to come into March, but then it has come in right now. So maybe you may see a bunch of approvals coming in the next 6 months, and that may lead to upgrades coming in. Just look at it in the pre-open. However, the volumes are not that great, but 10% higher. That's the sort of impact that it has. There no facility right now would be under the FDA scanner, or there no facility right now is under the FDA scanner after this EIR report that comes in as a big positive. It was trading around 16 times their earnings. So earnings go up, the PE multiples would go up, and that's why it could be one of the big buzzers today. And not only this, but the entire pharma pack could be doing well. So pharma on Friday was down. So we had a Sun Pharma, which was down 7. We had a Aurobindo, which was down 5. We have a Dr. Reddy's, which was down 6. We had a Lupin, which was down about 3.5%. Now, why was that down? Is because global pharma stocks on Thursday corrected. So, Teva was down 7%, but on Friday, it went up 3. Taro went up 3. Mylan went up 2.5. Impex Lab, a relatively smaller generic company, went up 7.5. Momenta Pharma was up about 2.5%. So all these names, actually corrected on Thursday, which Indian pharma companies or Indian companies followed on Friday, and then you saw a decent bit of impact coming in. Harihar, you had Sun Pharma as one of your top picks. Was that after the correction of Friday that it's trading at a 5-year low valuation? So it's better to buy for a long term?
Absolutely, because the big concern on Sun Pharma was, of course, that the integration with the Ranbaxy was taking much longer than was originally anticipated. But I think over the last 2 years, they have integrated a lot of Sun Pharma. A lot of the Ranbaxy baggage has actually been got rid of. So I think the core problem with Sun Pharma now is behind. The issue pertaining to cartelization as far as pricing is concerned, in my view, is not going to affect Sun Pharma substantially, because what we understand is there have been some companies involved in this price cartelization, but Sun Pharma apparently is not one of them. So I think that reality should probably dawn into the stock today, and we should see the stock moving up sharply over the next, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks.
Right. In the pre-open session, it's already indicating a 25 rupee higher start. But, Harihar, how do you look at this news flow? Price cartelization. I was just looking at Taro, some of the key drugs over there. So, about 30, 40, 50 million is the sort of peak sales that they have, except for some of the drugs which are 80, 90 million. So, even assuming a 60% margin over there, there could be a one-time fees. But, do you believe that it will have a very, very big impact on all the pharma companies? It can happen on 1 or 2 Indian companies, but, do you think the entire sector can see fines coming in?
See, I always felt that the correction on Friday was less to do with the US announcement and more with the confusion with the GST rates. Because apparently, I think pharma is paying a much lower GST rate today, and based on whatever we understand from the GST rates announced, is that pharma could fall in the 12 to 18% bracket, which could be much higher than what they're paying today. So I think that was a very key reason why there was already a state of panic over pharma, and the news from the US only, I think, served to accelerate the fall. We don't believe that the US news is going to be very serious. Number one, because I don't think Indian companies have been part of any cartelization as far as we understand. And number two, I don't think the impact is going to be substantial. It could probably be minor, but I don't think it could really be substantial in pharma companies.
Okay, so pharma stocks will definitely be in focus. We have a new listing today, so that will also be in focus, and this is PNB Housing Finance. The IPO received a good response. It has been subscribed 29.5 times, and even the retail participation has been pretty good, completely subscribed by the end of the day. Now, the issue price is around 775 rupees a share. They are raising about 3,000 crore rupees. Now, PNB Housing Finance is the 5th largest housing finance company in the country. It has a loan book size at 256 at 25,600 crore rupees. They have a diversified product portfolio with offerings in both retail and the loan against property, which is LAP. They have a network of 47 branches and 5,000 channel partners. And their performance, on P&L has also been pretty decent. They had net income of 839 crore rupees and a profit after tax of 327 crore rupees. As for the valuations, at the issue price, PNB will be about 4.6 times. It values favorably with its peers, though PNB of course is larger, and Ganfin Homes is slightly more expensive, 5.6 times, but it looks like a reasonable issue. Let's see how the listing is.
Right, so that will be one important issue, but the parent company of PNB Housing, PNB, actually declared numbers. So if I just look at the numbers, they seem to be decent. They are at least not as bad as Q1 was. So NII came in at 3,879 crores. Profits came in at 549 crores. It was higher than estimates in terms of profit. If I look at the operating profit, it came in at 3,300 crores. So that was a decent number. Net slippages were down 33%. However, one would say that the street was expecting a 40% sort of a fall. But the management very clearly stated in the press conference that the pace of recovery is lower, but they continue to believe that recovery would be same. However, the time may be slightly higher. On a QOQ basis, gross NPA declined by about 200 odd crores, but the book did not increase, and that's why the percentage was broadly flat. Loan growth, as I told you, did not increase much. It was only up about 3 odd %. The net NPAs were also still fine. We'll be talking to the management, but one of the key takeaways about the conference call was that they still expect slippages to moderate in H2. It can be led by upgradations. They expect the overall asset quality to only improve from here on. So that will be one name that will be in focus. Other PSU banks also declared numbers. So Union Bank, it was not as good as PNB or not as big a surprise. You can see PNB is up 5% in the pre-open session, but the numbers were decent for Union Bank as well. 2,200 crores, 8% higher. Profits at about 176 crores. The provisioning was on the higher side, and that led to these numbers. Gross NPA came in at 10.7%. Gross NPA on an absolute amount came in closer to 30,000 crores. There was an increase of about 2,000 crores QOQ. Slippages were expected to be around the 3,000 crore mark, but they came in at around 3,400 crores. The management said that they expect lower slippages. They expect lower credit cost in H2. Dena Bank also declared numbers. So it was a loss for them, 44 crores versus a profit number of 38 crores. NII at 670 crores and gross NPA came in at 13.7. So it was still higher than what it did on a QOQ basis. So all these PSU banks would be in focus today.
Would you look at anything for buying?
Well, overall, if we observe Bank Nifty, then 19,000 was a crucial support for Bank Nifty because there lies a 89 EMA on the daily charts as well as the previous support zones which is there in 19. So we may see some pullback rally, and since PSU banks have seen some sort of good correction in last few trading sessions, so the pullback rally may extend more towards PSU banking space. SBI is trading around its support of 240, 242 range. So I think a bit of pullback rally could be seen in that. Also PNB, although it's indicating much gap up opening, but on Friday's trading session on the daily chart, it had formed a hammer pattern, which is again a bullish pattern, and gap up opening, that's definitely a positive sign after formation of a trend reversal pattern. So I think PNB and SBI could be two stocks which could be seen for a pullback move. But again, it won't be much of a trended move wherein the stock would again resume its uptrend. It's more of a range bound trading with a higher volatility is expected, and the stocks may move towards the higher end of the range. So 4 to 5% up move can be expected in PNB as well as SBI.
Right, 4 to 5% in PNB and SBI. I think PNB in the pre-open session is already indicating a 5% move. So if you just assume that, Ruchit, what will be the view on PNB? 140 should be the max ceiling today?
I think it could extend up to 144 to 146. We had a gap down opening around 144 recently, so that gap could act as a resistance now when the stock moves towards those levels. So for today intraday, we can expect levels around 144 in PNB.
Right. Just quickly, a view on Titan as well, Ruchit?
Well, recently the stock has formed this low top, low bottom formation, and hence the short term trend for the stock clearly remains on the negative side. 385 is a crucial resistance for the stock now. So unless the stock gives a closing above 385, I think traders, at least short term traders, should definitely avoid any kind of bottom fishing in this one.
Right. We're just expecting the opening. I think prices on your screen should come up anytime soon. Pharma will be in focus. SPI is up about 2%. Sun Pharma is up 4%. Lupin is up close to 7.8%, 15.25 for Lupin. I think that's the top gainer as well. And, it should not actually stop here because it will lead to a lot of short covering into this name as well. Don't forget, Pharma on Friday was among the big short favorites, and that's why there would have been some positioning over there. So we'll wait and watch as to what happens. That's the top gainer. Aurobindo is up around 5%, and it was expected, with most pharma names reacting. Let's just look at Sun Pharma as well and what's happening over there. So that's also up around 3%, 670. Or the Sun Pharma, don't forget, was down 7% on Friday, and that's why probably it's seeing a sort of relief coming in. Bank of Baroda is the next top gainer. It's up about 2.5%. So that's a name which is doing well, 1.9% higher for BOP. About 62,000 shares traded. It's looking in decent. ICICI numbers today ahead of numbers, looking in strong. It's up around 2% or so, rather 2.5%. With very good volumes of 3 lakh shares. TCS is among the top losers, but I think the extent of losses is not particularly that great. So it's just down about 1% or so. We'll just wait and watch as to what happens. But, it's broadly looking in fine. It's not one of the big losers. ITC was among the top gainers on Friday, and probably that's why it's seeing some sort of a negative impact coming in right now. But again, it's just 35 paisa. So, it's not much when you consider size of ITC. Let's just look at some of the other names as well. What's happening with Adani Ports, what's happening with Hindalco, Idea. These are some of the names that were expected to do well, but they did not particularly do that well on a Friday. PNB is up around 4.5%, but I think it opened higher. So it's now around 138. It's 5% higher, 6.5, 7 rupees on the higher side for PNB. So that's also a name which is doing well. Let's look at Union Bank as well. That's also a name which declared numbers. Indian Hotel declared numbers. Let's just look at what is the sort of reaction on some of these names. So a Union Bank absolutely flat, clearly no change. Dena Bank is at about 35 odd rupees, so it's down about 3.5 odd percent. Adani Ports, no particular news flow, but it's among one of the top gainers, 2% higher. Indian Hotels is up around 1% or so. That's also a results reaction.
Let's talk about some other mid-tier names that have moved up. Today, real estate is bouncing back, and this is not unexpected. The high beta space does bounce back quite a bit. We're seeing Shriram EPC up 7.5%. SREI Infra Finance, it came out with its earnings. Profit showed a very good growth. That one's up 5%. We have Hindustan Constructions up 4.5%. JN Education is up 4%. Bombay Dyeing up 4%. India Bulls Real Estate up 3.5%. We have Hindalco bouncing up 3%. GMR Infrastructure is up 3%. NCC has also moved up higher. NCC, HCC had all lost in trade on Friday and are seeing a bounce back. NCC higher by about 2.5%. Syntex is up 2.5%. Dish TV at 89.4 is up 2.5%. Vedanta is higher. We're seeing stocks like DLF up 2%. JP Associates also up 2%. Federal Bank has also bounced back, and so has Unitech. So we have seen some bounce back coming into the real estate stocks that had seen quite a sell-off. The mid caps had seen a 2% cut on Friday. So we are seeing a bounce back in some of the mid caps, especially in the high beta space, and those have moved higher. At this point of time, on the losing end, very few companies actually, and the loss is not very large. Allahabad Bank is down 0.5%. Friday it had come out with its earnings. Union Bank of India is flat at this point of time. And if you look at the breadth, I'm sure at this point of time, there are certainly more stocks moving higher than those moving lower. Given the kind of selling over the last few days we've seen, some amount of bounce back can perhaps be expected. Ruchit, we've seen the Nifty at this point in time remains firm. It's above 8,500 level. Now, do you think the worst is behind us, or would you still wait for the US election results? On the charts, does it look like the Nifty may have bottomed out, or is it too early to say that?
I don't think there are still signs of bottoming out in the market, because if we observe since the last 1.5 months, the index has formed a falling channel, and the prices are clearly trading in a falling channel. So unless there are any kind of firm reversal signs, one should not assume that just because the markets are open higher that it has bottomed out. Also, if we recently observe last week's price action, then 85.50, which was a crucial support for the Nifty, was broken with a gap down opening. So that gap definitely is going to act as a major resistance now. So 85.50, I think on the pullback move, what we are seeing today is a major resistance, and I don't think that it would be very easy to take out that 8550 resistance zone. So 8550 to 8400 can be expected as a range for trading for next couple of sessions, but definitely still there are any signs of buying again coming in above 8550. One should not conclude that the markets have bottomed out at yesterday's low.
SP, what do you make of the pharma news and the sort of correction that we've seen? Does that give a buying opportunity for long-term investors?
No, certainly. I mean, certainly, it definitely gives a buying opportunity, but I think one will need to understand completely the ramifications of what the US Department of Justice have done. And here, my take would be, to look closely at Sun Pharma and Aurobindo. Again, disclosure, I have a very small holding in Sun Pharma. These are the two stocks that one would look at, because I have always maintained, Pankaj, that if one were to play the export game, I would much rather play the pharma game, because pharma has a sustainable long-term strategic story as far as Indian pharma companies are concerned. I've always been a little cautious about the IT game because pharma costs globally are going up, old age, etc. And most of these countries have universal medical coverage in some form or the other. Therefore, they need cheaper medicines. And where do they source it from? They source it from countries like India. I think there's a bit of a political issue about this as well, and it needs a bit of a macro handling. And I hope that the Indian pharma companies handle that, because it's a sensitive matter. Because overnight, I find it difficult to believe that there's a cartelization or there is this other things that are being mentioned against them. I find it slightly difficult to believe. I think it's also a question of, I don't want to use the word lobbying, but the question of a bit of a PR exercise as well that needs to be done. Certainly, yes. To give you a quick answer, definitely pharma is one space I always like, I've always maintained, and one would stick to the bigger names as far as that space is concerned.
Right, but pharma, this sort of news flow coming in, does it call for any multiple devaluation?
No, not really. I wouldn't venture to say that we have seen the bottom, but I think we are almost near the bottom as far as these prices are concerned. I think more than anything else, in terms of news flow, people want the news flow to kind of say, okay, then this is it. There's no more nasty surprises that are around the corner. I think that's what is holding it up. And once that comfort comes in, yes, there's nothing more, no more nasty surprises that are going to come from that space. I would then tend to go along with, I think Harihar or somebody recommended Sun Pharma. I think I would tend to then look at that, not perhaps at this moment, but clearly wait for all the dust to settle. And as I said, the big event, of course, I think the next few days, once the event risk is out of the way, I think that's one thing out of the way. And then, of course, one hopes that the GST action that was gathering pace is again slowed down a bit. One hopes that. Because GST, to my mind, is going to be a huge game changer. For instance, FMCG companies are going to benefit a hell of a lot, and so many other companies from whatever one is looked at.
But one will have to wait for it, right?
Absolutely, no question about it. One will have to definitely wait for it. And there's a bit of a 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because this whole issue of administration is being discussed. But definitely, it's a big game changer. No question about it.
Right. How would you look at some of these banking companies, especially the PSU banking names? You mentioned about the large ones, but some of the others that declared numbers. How would you look at them?
Excuse me. If at all one looks at PSU banks, Pankaj, I would stick to the bigger ones. Pleasantly surprised with PNB number. I have a small holding in PNB. That again is a disclosure I would like to make. I would again stick to the biggies. SBI, as you know, has always been some stock I like. Again, I have a small holding there. If at all one looks at any other PSU bank, one would much rather focus on PNB, because I'm not a trader, so I'm not going to really take calls on some of the smaller PSU banks, like some of the results which you just announced, whether it's Dena or Union Bank and stuff like that. Because as it is in terms of the banking space, there's enough choice available on the private sector. So if at all one is looking at the public sector space, expecting things to improve, one would much rather stick with the biggies, namely SBI and PNB, and I wouldn't look, frankly, beyond that.
Right. Harihar, how would you look at the PSU numbers that are coming in, or at least the management commentary has become positive?
No, certainly. It's definitely a lot more cautiously optimistic. Maybe the steps that are being taken to clean up things. And as long as there's that kind of a government pressure, I won't call it political pressure, the administration and government clearly is putting pressure. Now, of course, the matter is sub judice, but this headline news a couple of days back that the government has asked for 10,000 crores from Reliance and Bharat Petroleum, Reliance and BP, British Petroleum, gives an indication that this government is willing to take tough calls as far as some of these decisions are concerned. So long as that sort of a support is there, clearly then, and there is extension given to the SBI chairman for 1 more year, it clearly shows that, look, the government wants to do a cleanup act, and if that continues, definitely then the PSUs would definitely benefit out of that.
Right. Harihar, your outlook on PSU names, especially the beaten down ones?
No, honestly, I would still stay off the PSU banks, because I was just looking at the PNB numbers, and I think their gross NPAs are about 13.5% and net is about 9.5. Now, that means out of every 100 rupees you lend, 87 rupees comes back, 13 rupees doesn't. That's not a very comforting scenario for me as an investor. So honestly, given a choice, I would still prefer the private banks. I would prefer the established names like probably a Kotak or an IndusInd, or even the newfangled entrants like RBL Bank. I think PSU Bank, if somebody really was to hold a pistol on my head and ask me to select one, I would probably select an SBI. But I think beyond SBI, I really wouldn't go much further.
All right, Mr. Prasad, your call on Larsen. You spoke about the Suti sale. What's the outlook for Larsen? Do you think order inflow is going to improve execution? In any case, for L&T has been strong. Is it a good investment bet?
See, as I said, again, I'm still not convinced as far as the infra story is concerned, whether it's really kind of happening at the street. It looks like there is a bit of a momentum there, because the way the cement stocks have done, and if you look at some of the other industries, is a kind of an indication. But again, there is I'm sorry to come back to the event risk. So again, instead of taking a call on names like Larsen, there are enough and better names that are available if at all one wants to take a call. As it is, markets have come down slightly, so one would much rather look at those names rather than looking at Larsen right now. I would frankly still wait and watch.
All right. Rujit, do you have a view on some of the construction slash infrastructure names like Reliance Infrastructure, HCC and NCC?
Yes, among these names, we are quite positive on NCC firstly, because if we observe the broader degree charts, then the stock had recently showed formation of higher top, higher bottom on weekly as well as monthly charts. Now, I think even the recent breakout, if we see, which was around levels of 88, 89, was with very higher volumes. So that was the first positive sign. So I think this dip which has recently come in last few trading sessions could be used as a buying opportunity, since when the stock went higher, the volumes were high, and now when the stock is coming down, comparatively the volumes are quite low. So this clearly indicates that the uptrend could continue after this corrective move is over. So amongst the infrastructure space, NCC could be picked up on around current levels. One can keep a stop loss somewhere below 77, 76 levels, and if one can keep a time horizon of 3 to 4 months, then it could be expected that the stock could go above 100 levels.
Rujit, what about the housing finance names? Some of them lost quite severely. If you had to choose between, say, LIC and Dewan Housing Finance, do you have a preference? What would be the strategy actually? Would you look to buy at all?
So in the short term, we may see some more correction in this housing finance space, because recently all these stocks were quite overbought, had overbought momentum readings, and the correction in last few trading sessions definitely has been due to the overbought readings. So thus, if you observe the monthly or weekly supports, then for Dewan Housing it's coming around 280 levels, which is about further 7 to 8% down from current levels. Even LIC Housing, we are observing some next support around 5 to 6% lower from current levels. So I think some more 5 to 6% correction could be seen in both of these names. Around 280 Dewan Housing again would be very attractive to buy, because it would be again trading around its long-term support zone. So although both of the stocks looks good on the longer term charts, but after 5 to 6% correction from current levels, they should be seen.
Right. Just a word on Lupin as well, Ruchit. What will be your targets or levels that you would eye out for? You think majority of the positive impact is already in after this 5-6% move that we are seeing today?
See, the longer term charts of Lupin definitely looks quite positive. If we observe the monthly charts and put an trend following indicator, which is super trend, then since last 12 years this indicator has not indicated, the prices have always traded above that. And on every correction, every major corrective move in last 12 years, the stock has always taken support around that monthly super trend indicator and showed a bounce back. Even at currently the stock that indicator is placed around 1370. So definitely the long-term trend for the stock is still positive, and this decline is an opportunity, I think, for long-term investors again to get into the stock around current levels or maybe a bit lower around 1400. Now for short-term trend, the stock needs to cross above 1545 to again resume its positive momentum, because 89 EMA on the daily charts has acted as a resistance 5 times in the recent last 2 or 3 months. Also the channel resistance is coming around 1545. So those who are looking the stock from short-term trading perspective, let the volatility settle in, and if the stock manages to cross above 1545, then I think the stock could head higher towards 1650. So for short-term traders, the advice would be to wait for a closing above 1545 to get into the stock, whereas the long-term investors can look to buy the stock even at current levels.
Right, Ruchit. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. But before we go, can we just take disclosures? Harihar, let's start with you.
I have a small holding in Sun Pharma, not the other two I discussed today. But of course, we have recommended these stocks to our clients, and they may be having holdings in other stocks.
Right. SP, your disclosures for you?
Yeah, I've already told I have a small holding in Sun Pharma, a small holding in SBI, a small holding in HPCL as well as PNB.
Right. Ruchit, we've shown your disclosures, but any other disclosures apart from that?
I don't have any personal holding in any of the stocks that we have discussed, but we have recommended some of them, some of the trades to our clients, so they may have holdings.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for speaking with us on NDTV Profit and giving viewers your views on the markets and your top picks.